really thought hard what should be my last video of the year to my audience and everyone out there. And while so many things I can do reflecting on past year or predicting what's going to happen next year, I actually decided to do something that is much more impactful. And my fundamental idea is that 2025 was the year of pilots. Everyone now is at the peak of excitement and hyped about AI. And looking at all of that, I am convinced that next year will be even worse, in the sense that if you believe 2025 had too much AI pilots, 2026 is going to have much more. This is my gut feeling, and if data tells us something, that the vast majority of these pilots do not have a real ROI, and most of them are deemed to fail. Today, what I will simply do, I will give you a framework of thought about these AI projects. So if you are a decision maker in a company, or if you're an employee with high friction with these pilots, this framework will give you a mindset to really ask the right questions ahead of investing resources in these pilots. This is a comprehensive and deep topic, and there's lots of opinions around it. I will try my best to keep this video short, but if it doesn't end up short, I guarantee you it's a worthy time spent digging into the topic and trying to wrap your brain around it, and it will definitely change the way you look at AI projects. I hope you enjoy the episode. Do not forget to hit like button, subscribe, share it with others who might benefit. And with this, and without any further ado, let's get started.
Subscribe to Daddy's channel. The mic.
Let us start by defining the problem here. What are we trying to solve? Now, this problem is worthwhile really thinking about, because the solution doesn't make sense unless we really understand the problem. And look at these shocking numbers. These are by Gartner and other resources that you can find online. But 30% of Gen AI projects are abandoned after POC by the end of 2025. So these are the 2025 high-level numbers. 30% of these projects are left. So that might sound okay. So 70% are still there. Only 5% of these projects reach production with some kind of P&L impact. And again, this is only 5% that actually end up as something that people are using. And here, there is no guarantee that those 5% of projects actually carry on for a year beyond production, because some of the blind spots that companies have will still, at the end of production or after some time into production, make these companies realize that either it's not having a significant impact, or in some cases even it's driving loss rather than value. So think about it here. Out of 100 projects, only 5 make it to production. And out of these 5, the survival rate is something we're gonna find out in 2026. But I guarantee you, a good amount of that 5% even will drop out of production in a year after the application is put to use. And this is what I call the pilot trap cycle. This is what I see people talking about on LinkedIn. I see from colleagues and friends around me who talk about projects in their companies. And this is how it goes usually when it comes to AI and the excitement people are having and how they drive these projects. It starts by someone building something around AI in the business, in the corporate. It could be something based on Copilot or something more sophisticated. Then basically adoption spikes, meaning that people get excited. Oh wow, it can do this and that. So people want to actually use it. People start putting slides and presenting to executives. They get some taps on the back, which is nice. And then finance or the business in general will have questions around ROI. And here usually people will try to, because they believe in the application that they created, they will try to put it together in a way that it shows some kind of ROI, all based on assumptions on things this application would be saving, assuming that scenario 1, 2, and 3 happens. And because the business wants to show optimization and efficiency, everyone's under pressure, even the C-level people, they want to believe what they're saying. So if you give them an assumption, even if it's murky a little bit, they will want to believe it. And this is why I believe so many pilots will still skip this step and go through the ROI question, because people will put so many assumptions that the corporate wants to believe that they're having this funnel of projects that will build up that amazing amount of efficiencies and optimizations into the future. Now, wise companies, even for pilots, will ask questions around risk, compliance, security, and so forth. This is important, and even sometimes maybe it doesn't happen in the right amount in these pilots for some companies, but for sure this is something not to be skipped by any framework out there. And finally, the project goes to production, and then when it's put in operation, people find that there's lots of gaps, lots of mistakes, lots of rework. Even those could result into catastrophic issues for the brand, for so many cases that we see out there. For example, everyone heard about the Deloitte case where they went to court because they gave reports to the Australian government that had AI hallucinations within them. I nearly guarantee you, this is not simply an employee who used ChatGPT. This probably is some kind of system they created that people defaulted to depend on overly, and it ended up with such results. So this can be catastrophic, and this is the cycle that takes 100 projects at this end, and it ends up at less than 5 projects that survive at this end. And again, this is at close timeline after production. Maybe in a year, none of them will survive, or at least one makes it. Now, what are we evaluating when we look at these projects? This is a very important question to look at the beginning. So people should be clear. We are not evaluating a smart model, even a fine-tuned model for use case. That will help, but it's not the thing that we're evaluating. We're evaluating a socio-technical system, because whatever application we're putting out there, it involves people that use it, it involves the technology, it involves the pipeline, it involves the automations within it, the whole environment and ecosystem around that application, AI application. Even the way it will switch or it will affect the behavior of the people using it, because that's a big part of the game. So the main things we should be evaluating here is the model, it's one of them, the prompts, because that is definitely a key to how certain applications will behave, retrieval. If we're looking at corporates have lots of data, and in most, if not all applications, there is a source of data that they want to tap into to retrieve and give people or the users some intelligence around it. And then the tools that are used in that application, the permissions, who has access to that intelligence, the user interface, the workflows, the humans. And this is a key point. My biggest worry always is that humans have the tendency to depend on AI. Corporates should be careful, and they should really ask the correct questions about behavior at the beginning. And last but not least, again related to the humans, the incentives. If a person is using this new AI application, what is their incentive? Is it making their life easier? Is it making them efficient? Is it actually threatening at a high level without a real valid proof point there that they're gonna lose their job? You might have a resistance around that. And this here is the fundamental message. You do not ship a model, you ship an operational behavior. This will switch the behavior fundamentally in the way people approach operations in a corporate, regardless of the area of that operation. Now, once we understand fundamentally the problem of approaching AI project pilots in the corporate or the business we're in, then we have to go to the next phase of this framework. How do we approach a return on investment idea or a return on investment calculation? The biggest ROI illusion out there with AI projects is that time saved is money saved. It's not true. Not in AI application, at least not in all AI applications. So these are the conditions. If you are pitching a pilot, for you to make the claim that time saved equal money saved, these are the conditions over here. We have 4 conditions we have to have to really be able to push an ROI argument. Clearly, again here, objectively showing that we can reduce cost, increase throughput. We have to evaluate properly and be able to prove that with the same headcount and enabling that AI application, we can have more output that matters, because not all outputs are equal. We need output that matters. Output can have lots of issues, lots of errors, and lots of rework. So it could drive to either a neutral efficiency, if not at loss. If not, you're doing actually more work before the use of AI applications rather than after it. So we need to have more output from the same people. That matters. The third one is accelerate revenue. Does it really create faster cycles? Revenue recognized sooner. So for example, I'm talking about my world, which I understand. If I'm within the procurement organization and I'm putting together something around AI application for my function, I need to assess, will this help me actually get things delivered faster, suppliers paid faster, and I realize those sales and profits faster within my organization? How do I measure that? How do I evaluate that? If I can prove that, I'm on the right track. And lastly, improve outcomes. So we're not only talking about outcomes that matter, but I want to make them better. So today, if I operate without an AI application as a procurement team again, or a supply chain team, and I have an X amount of output in certain criteria or metrics or KPIs, I need to really objectively measure that I'm doing a higher quality job in these outputs. So I'm having less rework, less defects in the equipment I'm buying, less logistic issues at ports, less. I have to be able to measure all of these different metrics that tells me, yes, I did improve my outcomes with this AI application. And these are just two high-level examples, maybe won't give the detailed level of analysis that you need to do within your organization, but just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. So for example, if you have a call center, you have a clear increase in productivity, you have faster closed tickets, you have, with the same team that you have in that call center, more tickets are processed in the same time frame, you are on the right track to actually say, you know what, this is a project that should last. And these questions and these metrics should be defined at the beginning, not after you deploy it to that call center, for example. But at the flip side, you can, for example, get AI applications to developers in a company. And it might show an increase in code generated or pull requests generated, but you might also untap a huge amount of rework being done in that organization. So probably you're losing money while you're looking at a fancy AI tool that is not really bringing value. And this is, I know it's a big debate. I just put it as an example. It's a big debate out there by experienced developers, especially when we look and we assess the coding agents out there like Claude Code and Codex. Everyone has an opinion on it. My intention is just to show that this can be either or. So you have two different scenarios that could be the outcome. You need to think about, how do I measure all of these things? Am I capable of capturing that data objectively? Can I, when I develop that application, when the idea actually picks up steam later on, am I able to really hit these conditions? So you have to think about, you might not prove them all at the beginning, but you need to have that framework of thought ahead of going and developing the tool. This is the mistake. People jump to develop the tool at the beginning, as we've seen in the problem. So this is what you need to think about when you are considering an AI application and when you're thinking purely around the ROI for that application. Now, what are the hidden ROI killers? These are things you have to be aware of, and those are things, again, that must be part of the conversation. Companies that skip these discussions just to push a certain amount of AI pilots, I believe they will lose money in the process and they will not gain anything significant unless they do it the right way. Have the right conversations. It is fine to take risk, but it's much better if you go forward understanding what's at stake, what are the challenges and the issues, and what are the considerations that you need to be doing. So the main killers is rework and verification. So how do you really define that an application is achieving its outcome goals? How do you measure it? So unless you are getting a measurable outcome of that application, are you really able to assess it properly? Are you able to assess the amount of rework that this application is generating? Are you doing the proper verification of that outcome to really, at least in one way or another, make a judgment call about that application? So that could be one killer of your ROI if you miss thinking about it. Now, the second one is incident handling. AI will fail. You can build a pilot, and so many times, even for me, for my YouTube channel, I build applications. Now, even if I stress them a little bit, I put them under stress test, failures will start happening. An application for a demo or a pilot is totally different from an application in production. I guarantee you that. I'm not a developer, but I know enough doing vibe coding that this is the case. Ask any developer and they will tell you the same case. You need to really think about the high potential that you're gonna get failures. How do you measure them? How do you capture them to save the business, especially if the testing of that application is happening with live customers or live actual work that generates money for the company or affects the image of the company. Security handling. This is a big one and people do not think about it. And this also, I would say, it could be the quickest way of losing the opportunity of getting the right AI application. Because you don't think about it correctly, you don't have the proper conversations with IT or with the technical folks in your organization, and something goes wrong. And your data, and God forbid, your customer data gets leaked. So I put prompt injection here because so many people who are doing lots of work on AI applications in corporate, I always ask them, have you heard about prompt injection? None of them heard it. None of them heard the term. So we need to be careful with the security, not only from an IT perspective, but as someone thinking about a demo. What data are you receiving? What data are you generating? Where is that flowing? What parties are affected directly or indirectly by this application in terms of security, sensitivity, data privacy? You have to ask these questions again in the right time. And the last one is legal and compliance. Again, depending on the function that you use, depending on where you operate within a corporate, this is a fundamental part that you cannot miss as well. Again, I'll give myself as an example. In supply chain and procurement, compliance is a fundamental aspect and step within our workflow. I cannot work, for example, with certain parties or certain countries or certain companies, especially that I work for an American company. So I have to think about AI application with legal and compliance in mind, especially if it even remotely touches those areas where I need to have it really concrete within that process. So these are the 4 killers. Again, this is the statement I keep saying. Rework is the stealth killer. The number one thing that doesn't get measured by most companies even before AI is rework. How much a certain process, even in automation, is driving rework. And once you measure that, that could change the way you approach any application for that matter. But here we're talking about AI applications. And here is a different way to look at it. You know, the idea is that AI will give the same amount of headcount that you have in an organization to generate much more value. This is the promise that AI is giving us. You do not want to use the same time of your people to move from doing actual work to doing verification work. So you can see here, it shifts from creation to inspection. You do not want that. You want that if it's really making sense. So if your people are doing, let's say, 70% less work and 20% more verification, maybe you're working with something that is good, right? But you do not want people to save 50% in work and increase their workload by 60-70% for inspection. You are not actually achieving anything here, even in terms of time and efficiency of these people. And also, I believe quality will take a hit because when people are doing the work, they are so involved that they understand everything A to Z. It will increase always the quality of the output and the outcome. If you move people from doing work to inspecting work, they will have that barrier. They will have that distance between them and the work. People will start really not engaging, not giving the right answers, and not making the correct decisions. So just to caution people that, all of this is not just to do a nice video and caution people around the risk when dealing with AI applications. These two, maybe you've heard about them, maybe not. These two are well-known cases that you can simply Google out there. You're going to find them. One is the Deloitte Australia issue in October 2025, where Deloitte were fined by the Australian government for a report it submitted for a paid job for Deloitte that had references that didn't check out. Those were hallucinations. So Deloitte, a company that advocates and goes around to tell corporates how to use and how to do these pilots and AI projects, actually didn't do the job themselves. And if you think about the cost that Deloitte took for this small amount, it looks, for a company like Deloitte, 450,000 looks like nothing. But I guarantee you the cost for all parties involved is much more. So it's rework and correction, it's loss of trust. Again, the brand is affected. For me, if anyone tells me, Samer, we are onboarding this company for an AI application, I will have my doubts, honestly, because I know what happened. Contract consequences. So they were taken to court and probably they're gonna pay money directly and indirectly. They will have a lot of consequences to cover for this case. And finally, political security. So here they were dealing with the government. I guarantee you there's repercussions and secondary shockwaves to this incident to Deloitte, at least in Australia. Maybe by other government. The second one, I'm sure you heard one version of it, these checkout. So multiple incidents happened where lawyers actually used ChatGPT or other AI models to prepare their case in the court. And they actually, part of their case, they referred to cases that didn't exist and they were caught. And they had really bad consequences to pay. So this is real, the danger of playing around with AI applications without this framework or any other framework for that matter that you create before you start jumping around and throwing projects is really necessary. It's not a joke. So this is my fundamental message for this slide. The real cost of these AI applications is not the cost of hours in time and technology and tokens to generate them and create them. The real cost is being wrong. If you build the best application and you don't take care of things and one major incident happens, that's the real cost, and that's where the biggest damage will happen. So now let's go to the good stuff, to the solution. I've been talking problems and issues for a big part. Now I'm gonna give you the pathway to doing this properly. And this is in multiple phases and multiple aspects to think about it. And by the way, do not worry, I will share these slides or this content from ExcelliDraw with you all as a scene, so you can look at these slides, use them as you wish, and ask questions if you want in the comment section. Many of these areas are areas of expertise. You need experts around them. I'm not an expert in most of them. These are deep technical areas in some cases, but you need to have that framework, to have that conversation, and then probably having the right people along with you to help you with the thought process when you are looking at these AI applications. So this is the 4-layer evaluation model. Now, at the core of any AI application is an AI model. I think that's clear enough. Yes, it's not all about the AI model, but at the core of it, this is the heart of the AI application. So you need to have the capability to evaluate the model, how accurate it is, how factual it is, the latency, and the cost. You have to really assess the cost per token and how many tokens you're consuming per request or phase of that applications. That can't be missed. The second layer, which is the system evaluation. So this is everything you build around the model. All the tools, all the retrieval technology, all the data storage or the databases, everything that this applications runs with. So you have to look at retrieval quality, tool safety, permissions, and citations. You need evidences for, especially when you're dealing with legal documents or you're dealing with customer documentation that will help you provide an outcome. So you need to really assess all of these different type of metrics as much as you can. And this is where most failures happen. Building that system and not evaluating it is the killer of any AI application or idea in a business or a corporate. The third layer of evaluation is the workflow evaluation. And the difference between system and workflow is the element of humans. So here you need to measure the acceptance rate. Are the people using the application or having friction with it actually seeing value? Is there resistance? Why is that resistance there? Is there real value that people see? Yes or no? You have to measure those. You have to be able to measure these areas. The second one is edit rate. How much work humans have to do or put in this application for it to generate the outcome. That could be part of the overall rework process. Verification time. How much do you need to put into that tool to verify the outcomes? So for example here, and I think that those examples matter, so bear with me. So let's say you have an AI application for a legal firm that actually helps lawyers quickly generate contracts for their customers. How much time does it take a lawyer to review that contract and maybe redline it and edit it and update it and give feedback to the AI application until they get to the satisfactory end result of a contract that they can actually give to the customer as an output, compared to the time a lawyer would spend on actually creating that contract manually? That has to be very clear, because it might be worse with an AI application, believe it or not. And again, trust calibration. Is there a way for your business or company to capture the trust of the users and maybe the customers as an impact of that application? So maybe you're doing it behind the scenes without being transparent with the customer. I honestly can't judge if that's correct or not. But if you're doing so, can you actually objectively, maybe a little bit subjectively, measure the trust in the outcomes that your business is generating based on the use of such AI application? And in this layer is where the ROI either lives or dies. So here, if you're in this layer and you don't get things right, this is where you can create an amazing ROI study not based on these things and end up with a big failure at your hands. Or you can actually dig deep into these areas and make an informed decision that, you know what, we're gonna shut down this project, it doesn't make sense. Or, you know what, we did proper testing and everything at this stage tells us that this is worthwhile for us to carry on. The fourth layer is the business outcome. Here you're looking at the actual impacts of the AI application to the work that you're doing within your department or within your business in general. And here you look at things like cycle time, throughput, cost avoidance or reduction, incidents. Again, these are things we already mentioned, but this is what executives are looking for. But unless you are able to look at these, measure them, and tie them to layer 3, layer 2, and layer 1 in the way you evaluate things, this is a project destined for failure, I guarantee you that. So anyone can come here and give their subjective opinion on the ROI expectation for all of these metrics based on experience or even superficial testing. But the biggest failure happens if you come up with something like this here without actually managing all the other layers. You have to perform all the other layers before you go to layer 4. You cannot skip any of them and jump to layer 4. What I see today, in most cases, people just skip 1, 2, and 3 and they go to layer 4. And based on layer 4 alone, they decide about the pilot. And that's a big issue for these pilots and these projects in companies. And remember, the amount of these projects are consuming thousands of hours. That's a big loss if most of them, as we've seen, actually fail and don't end up bringing value to the organization. 5% is a dangerous percentage to have for projects that actually make it to the production stage. So this 4-layer evaluation model is a very critical conversation to be had within any discussions around pilots within your organization. So now we understand these evaluation layers. How should we now calculate the ROI? The proper way in AI applications to calculate the ROI. Here I'm calling it the risk-adjusted ROI. And this is the formula. It's very simple. The risk-adjusted ROI is the value created, again, based on the metrics that we measure, savings, throughput, avoidance, whatever it is, minus total cost, minus the expected harm. This is a big one. Believe me, going forward to your executives with the risk openly, tell them, we have all of this, we have strong evidence, we have this framework with 4 layers of evaluation, and we've done all of that work. We know the value that this will create. We know the cost, and we are expecting some failures at the beginning, some harm. And all of it is already baked into our ROI. And that's our ROI. You will have much reception from the executives and much support, in my opinion, than you would do in a flimsy way that's happening today. At some point, all of the executives in these corporates will either become much smarter in really looking at these projects, or much skeptical, and they will be tending to shut them down even without listening. So this is the way to present an ROI for an AI project. And at the end, once you divide all of that by the total cost, you have your ROI. Obviously here, the value created should be much higher than these subtracted items here, the total cost and the expected harm. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. You're not going to have a real ROI. And this is your signal that, you know what, we're going to shut it down. I'm not going to take it to the executives. If it's still significant at this stage, you are much more confident to stand in front of any executive and make very solid case that I want this amount of investment to deliver this type of result. And these are openly and transparently the risks. People will support you if you do that. And let me hit about these quick examples. It will help you capture this even at a deeper level. So value created. How is value created? Revenue lift, cost reduction, monetized throughput, cycle time gains, quality improvements. These are things that really create value for the organization. What is the cost? You have licensing and compute, integration engineering, data pipelines, process redesign, training and change management. All of these, you should think you have to retrain maybe a complete force to use this tool. It has a cost. You have to look at it all from A to Z. Governance and overhead. Who's going to look at the whole thing? Who's going to manage it? Who's going to actually direct it in the right way? That will take lots of management time spent around these AI tools. Lastly, expected harm, rework due to error, incident response, legal exposure, security failures, reputation damage. Be honest with these expected harms and dismiss them if they don't apply to your case. And this is what I describe honestly for all the projects to my friends and people I see around me. Again, you will find lots of resistance around that, I'm going to be honest. But if you do not price error, you are not doing ROI, you are doing optimism. And I see with the huge amount of projects being pushed for good reasons and by good people who are super optimistic about maybe shining in their organization, or really they want to bring value to their business, but they don't have the right framework to think about this. And it's all about optimism at that stage. Unless you have a similar framework, you're just an optimistic corporate person. That's it. No more, no less. So some more detail around evaluation, because it's not a secret that evaluation in AI in general is a tough cookie. To evaluate models, to evaluate how models behave within applications, it's a tricky thing. If you go online, you'll find loads and loads of content and papers from people who try to assess how we evaluate things when it comes to AI. So this is kind of a pipeline that gets you to think about potential things that you can do around evaluation. It's not black and white, I guarantee you that. So how do you, for example, how do you evaluate, based on our previous example, the contract that the AI application for the legal firm created? Is it good or bad? It doesn't happen that way. A contract might, do you quantify maybe the number of errors in that contract after you review it? Like, you have to make clear decisions around how you evaluate these things. Maybe it is correct, but it's too lengthy as a contract. How do you evaluate that? So you have to have that frame of mind of evaluation. The most time you should spend when it comes to AI applications fundamentally, how do I run these evaluations? So to this point, I gave you the ideas of the layers of evaluation, how you should do them in general, but the details, the devil is in the details when it comes to actual evaluation. How do you evaluate? How do you maintain that database of evaluation? How do you read it? How do you actually interpret it? And what do you do with it? That's really the crux of all of this. It's a framework within the framework to tell you, how do I look at evaluation? It will help you. You will need to brainstorm with lots of experts and colleagues within your organization to really come with the value or with the evaluation that fits your needs. There's no right or wrong in these things. Well, sometimes there is wrong, but you need to really think this through. So it starts with the value. How do you define the unit of value? And then how do you define the unit of risk? You have to define it as a unit to measure it. Anything you don't measure, you don't improve, right? So you need to make these conscious decisions about measuring a unit of value, and after that, a unit of risk. For the unit of value, what success looks like, tickets per hour, cycle time, etc. For the unit of risk, what failure costs, hallucination, leaks, bias, all of these things, incidents like what Deloitte had, you have to define them really well. Now, after that, you have to establish a baseline. Your before, so what used to happen as an outcome in the process before having that application, and what's after. If you are in an organization that doesn't measure these things, so you're not measuring really the value outcome of your department or your business, you're going to struggle with really measuring the impact of the AI application positively or negatively. You need to develop the baseline. If you don't have that, build the baseline. For example, a typical procurement organization, we will have savings that we achieve, cycle times of delivering material, days payable outstanding, basically the time it takes for us to pay the supplier after they deliver to us. All of these things I have a baseline for. For years I'm measuring that. Now when I bring an AI application in any area of procurement or supply chain, I can look at before and after. And that could tell me I'm in the right direction or the wrong direction. So you need the baseline. After that, and this is really important, you have to create what is called a golden set. You can think about a golden set as your own evaluation benchmark for your application. So there are well-known evaluations for AI models out there. And what you are actually doing here, you build a clear set of tests or evaluations. These are precise ones. So let me give you an example, and I'm gonna go to the law firm example again. If I make mistakes, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just trying to give you an idea around this. So let's say you have contracts when it comes to buying a house, contracts where you contract a supplier, contracts for acquiring a business, and so forth. And what you do is you build up typical cases, examples, with all the minute details. And on the other end, you build the perfect outcome. So this is the perfect contract that a lawyer, a human lawyer, or an AI system should be creating based on all of this data. That could have objective information, like for example, the number of clauses, the details within those clauses, values as numbers maybe, even the length, number of characters within that contract, whatever comes to your mind, you have to build that golden set. And the reason this golden set is super important, it is your own business evaluation. What you do is, when you run an AI application, these AI applications have lots of variables. Even after you put them to production, you might change the prompting with them. You might switch models. So you want that golden set, these example like test and answer, test and answer. That could be complex and that could be simple to measure. It depends on what you're actually addressing. But having that golden set, it will give you a benchmark for any change you do in that system. I change the model, I'll remeasure against the golden set, I'll see the outcome. I will know it's positive or negative. So this is a core and smart thought to have whenever you are developing an evaluation of an AI application within your organization. Build your own evaluation, build your own golden set. And 5 here, where it gets a little bit complex. Again, depending on the type of business you're doing. If it's something measurable, it's easy to score things. If it's something that, well, goes more closer to the subjective arena of things, like a contract or maybe a write-up that will go as a letter, business letter, all of these things have that big subjective element in them. Even if it's not something clearly measurable, there are solutions around it. Not perfect, things are developing as we speak, but you can have human evaluators within the organization, like a lawyer looking at the outcome of the system, judging it as good or bad. Again, it's not a perfect scenario because not necessarily the human judgment is always the perfect one. So this could get costly, just to be aware of it. And then if you're lucky, well, as we said, things are measurable, you can automate it. But also, even if things are a little bit subjective, there are technologies to kind of score these things without human intervention if you want to save time, which is, for example, using AI as a judge. Now, this is, again, one of the areas that are debatable. So you'll have to think about it, have some experts in the room, and discuss about the feasibility of using AI as a judge. Again, AI can get things wrong as well. So this is a tricky part where you definitely need experts. So it's not just an opinion-driven discussion where non-AI experts can really give their opinion. For example, AI models, as an example, not all of them, some of them might be biased towards texty outputs or verbatim outputs. So if the AI application for the law firm gets 2 contracts, one has more text than the other, it might actually mark the more text contract as higher quality or higher score than the lower text, which might not be true as we know. So you have to be careful when you have these conversations. These areas, you just have to understand that it is not perfect scoring. I would rather, if it's something that is having high impact on the brand, high impact on your customers, to have human or multiple human evaluators. AI evaluators followed by human evaluators. You have to be very careful in how you orchestrate the evaluation and the scoring of the outcome. Number 6 is instrument rework, basically rework. So you have to really be able to track how much editing or how much hand holding the application is requiring in production or even in piloting for a user to get a really good quality outcome. And then how much it takes to be evaluated for it to be good enough to go to an actual customer or an actual use. You have to measure that time. It will be definitely an area that will affect how you look at the ROI, how you make decisions around that application and the use of it. And in my opinion, one of the best things you can do is have kind of A/B testing. For example, if you use social media, if you create ever a video on YouTube, you have an option to put 2 thumbnails for your video. Thumbnail 1 and thumbnail 2. It will go out, people might react differently to each thumbnail, and then you measure these clear and objective metrics for each thumbnail and you decide which one is better. Here, for example, let's say I'm a procurement team, I have an AI application. Well, what I would do is I would run it in one area globally, let's say it's a global organization, or one country within a certain region, and the other region I would keep running normally, manually. And with time, I'll start measuring the impacts. It will be an eye-opener because unless things significantly improve on the area or the country where you're using the AI application, so outcomes, you have more value, you are able to manage the risk and the issues out of that AI application, you're evaluating it properly, you're getting the value regardless, financial, customer satisfaction, etc., etc. Even you're getting the value maybe that the quality of work for your employees is higher. So you can measure so many things just by doing that A/B testing. So run it in one location, do not run it in the other, and measure the differences. Now, just quick mentions that are important. Human feedback is noisy. I know we advocate one of the best things sometimes is to use human feedback, but again, humans are not perfect as well. So different reviewers will have different standards, fatigue and skimming. If you get someone to review too many things, they will just approve, or actually not behave in the way that you need them to behave. Overtrust. People might be influenced by AI outcomes that they trust it more than it should be trusted. Incentive distortion. This is a tough one, but this is human nature. Imagine you're getting someone to evaluate a tool that potentially can replace them. Do you think they will be super honest with evaluation? So this is part of change management. Unless you have proper change management into how you take the humans, the organization, the business, the processes through this change, you will fail. So this is a very complex area we are tackling and people are just skimming the surface in these corporates. Rating helpfulness versus correctness. So again, this is the subjective element of humans. Is the reviewer actually rating the outcome as how helpful it is or how correct it is? You want someone to be evaluating against correctness and not a helpful thing. So even you can have the other side of the aisle actually evaluating positively the outcome so they can get access to such technology. So it's not easy, it's not straightforward with neither human evaluators nor AI evaluators today. Now, how do you make the review more reliable, regardless with AI or humans? Well, actually, you have to have a clear definition what is correct, what is good as an outcome. Make it as something that is clearly defined in specific areas. So whoever is reviewing, is it AI, is it human, they are reviewing against very crystal clear criteria points. Measure the reviewer agreement, again, regardless of human or AI. So again, you're measuring the performance of the reviewer here. See, it gets complex, but this could tell you something. Because even an AI can be overly approving things or overly rejecting things. So you have to look at the performance of the reviewer or the approver, human or AI, and look at trends there. Separate review types. Again, you cannot have the same entity or human review across many of these layers that we have. You have to route things by risk level. Again, depending on what you're looking at within your business. If it's something high risk, you need the expert to be looking at it and not a fresh graduate within that organization. And also, as we try to help these evaluators define what's good, also we need to help them to define what is incorrect, where you make the decision to fail a test or to fail an evaluation. So that has to be something very clearly defined, as well as defining the good part or what's actually a quality outcome. And finally, you have to make the friction of the evaluation proportional to the impact. So if you're dealing with something significant that has a significant impact, regardless financially, to the brand, to the outcomes, to the customers at high value, ticket items for the customers, yes, it's worthwhile to put lots of hours and efforts in these evaluations, regardless by humans or caused by AI. But if it's something that is minor, this is where you might even make a decision not to evaluate at all if it's complex, but having some kind of subtle, you go directly to the A/B testing, or you can find just an indicator type of testing that is low cost. So you'd have to think about tailoring your approach as well. There is no one fit all approach. So you have to tailor everything you're doing around here. Again, believe me, I'm scratching the surface. So you have to, based on the projects that you're handling, really have that framework detailed further purely for your organization or for your specific function within an organization. Now, security and compliance, I will not spend lots of time. Please, this is where you involve people. This is where you really think hard around the security of what you're building and the compliance towards what you're building. You have to involve the people, even the people that you're expecting them to say no. Get the bad news at least, and later if you have a solid case that makes that risk maybe potentially worthwhile, make that case. Do not skip this. This is a big killer for organizations, for AI projects in the future, for so many areas. So think about security, involve people who understand what they're talking about. Think about compliance, get your legal compliance team to help you think around potential impacts of such an AI application. There are regulatory standards out there as we speak being developed. Europe is notoriously there. Some people say it's actually slowing Europe down when it comes to AI. That could be true. But I believe these kind of regulations are important to keep an eye on, because today you're having fun within your corporate, wherever you are in the world, creating these projects. At some point in 2026 or further, I genuinely believe, unless you keep an eye on these regulations, regardless from the EU or the US, you are shooting yourself in the foot, because midway of developing your application, even if it's approved with the ROI case and it goes to production, if you do not understand these regulations, you might be stopped from taking an application to production or putting out of production until and unless you meet those regulations. So as an organization, it is the time now to start looking at the regulations out there and make informed decisions on how you will work around them. So let's spend a minute looking at what's the future here. So we're trying to struggle with all of these moving parts, with all of that technology complexity, with all of these risks and promised values out of the technology. So what do we expect in the future of all of this? So in the future, do not expect that a major change in such a framework will happen. You're gonna still have to work with continuous assurance to the business, continuous monitoring of these applications, periodic audits. Drift detection. Is the model behaving, or the application or the system behaving in the same way, or it's drifting based on changes? Because as we explained, there's lots of moving parts. Do you have your golden set to measure this? Incident tracking. Are you tracking when things go wrong? Version management. Again, this is a pure technical aspect of these things, and it is necessary. You have to think about, you have to get someone from IT to sit with you and think about these things. Again, this will be very important in the future. AI as a judge will be a big thing in the future. Now it's being debated heavily. There's lots of research happening around that, because we know it's a bottleneck when it comes to running these applications. We need a cost-effective evaluation model, and AI is our best bet. But again, we need to have it proper and with guardrails. Again, having your golden set will also help you, as we said, monitor your AI as a judge performance. Randomized order, so again, you look at bias, multiple judges ensembles, so you can have a judge of a judge. So you can, for example, have two judges evaluate one outcome, and then both outcomes are evaluated by a third judge. So it gets complex. And then recalibration periodically. So you can go back to these judges, recalibrate them, monitor their performance, and make decisions on your own if that is encouraging towards pushing further the application or actually slowing it down and being careful with it. Finally, better provenance will not go away. So cite retrieved sources. So you need to understand where the information is coming from, what is the source, and check all of that. Work only with verified sources, preserve audit trails and traceable outputs. So you have to have a trace from point A to point Z, input and output, so you can assess what's happening in the middle, sort of. And finally, so this is the final slide. If you actually waited so far, good. I think you're ready for your next pilot, either to make a decision or actually take a team and coach them towards the right approach for that project and get the right people involved in that project. I think you're ready to summarize all of it because now you understand all the pieces of the puzzle. This is the adoption gated model. So these are the gates that there's nothing new here. So we're going to reflect on the parts of this framework that we covered before, just as a high level gate review. So you have to go through each gate until you really hit the jackpot with the right application, because now you understand everything. And if you remember what we said in the problem definition of how things are happening today, which is wrong, this is the version 2.0 that you have to adopt. So gate 0, use case intake. So you take the use case, you look at it, you define things. As we discussed already, I will not repeat. You have to ask yourself all the tough questions. Once all of these tough questions are answered and you think it is ready and is good to go and there's consensus around that, to gate 2, you're good. Gate 1 is proof of capability. Here you do basic requirement testing. So you test, for example, a demo type of application against the golden set. You assess latency, you assess cost. You look at these things that just give you an indicator. It's not validated yet. It just tells you, you know what, this could work. Let's move to the next phase. But again, depends on your application and the impact of what you're addressing here. You need to either spend a little time or really good amount of time in this gate. Now, if you end this gate, you're done with it, and everyone believes that this has high potential of having a real adjusted ROI, not the assumed ROI people are using today, then you can actually progress to the next gate. Gate 2, pilot in a workflow. So here we said it before. We say workflow when you actually get people to work with it. So here you put it to use, not necessarily across the organization. This is a good place, the gate 2 part, to do the A/B testing. So you get a certain part of the organization to use it. And you actually look how much rework is happening, how much incidents are happening out of that, how much editing is needed or hand-holding across the life cycle of each application from point A to get an output. All of these things that we already covered, this is where you start digging deep in evaluation and assessing the application. And if after a sufficient time of application, you believe and there's consensus by all of the stakeholders within your organization that the outcome is still good, still positive, to go to the next gate, then you're ready to move out of this gate to the next one. Gate 3 is production. So now you've done the right evaluation. You have the measures. You're measuring everything. You're evaluating everything. You're even evaluating the evaluators of the AI application. So you have everything sorted out. Here you actually put it out there. You put it in the real world for the real testing. And here you're monitoring everything. You are looking for stability. For sure, when it goes to production, you will have issues that never ever appeared before. So now, because you followed the framework, your production application, AI application, is for the most part solid and safe, but you still have to do it. So for example, let's say you have an organization, you work in a corporate that have multiple business units. You are putting this into production into one of them. Before you even consider having conversations about corporate-wide application, scaling it, you need to continue the testing here. You're in the production, it's stable. Once consensus is there, once you have real impacts, even with the good and the bad, but overly positive as an impact of this application, then you can move to the next gate. Here you can have a clear and precise adjusted ROI results that you can show to anyone. And once all of that checks out, you can go to the next gate. And this is the final next gate. This is where you actually scale it. You start to optimize it, improve it, monitor it, keep monitoring it, and actually do more with it. And by the time you hit gate 4 and you're scaling an application, believe me, even if you do one right application, you have skills and knowledge and know-how within your business that will help you get the second and the third and the fourth successful AI application if you do it right. And this is the final statement I will make here. Corporate AI adoption is not deploying intelligence. It is building a measured, governable capability that changes constraints without introducing unacceptable risk. That is fundamentally what we're trying to achieve with this framework. And we're done. Now, from what I've spent on this so far, I think this is going to be on the longer side of my videos. I'll try to trim it as much as I can. And probably there's no one watching to this point. If you are still here, write me a comment in the comment section. I would appreciate it. I hope you've seen the value here, and it is well worth your time, I believe, if you watch it. If 5 people watch this, I did my job. I'm happy with the results. I hope more watch it, obviously. If you did, and if you've seen the value, please give me your feedback. If you have any areas where I need to consider in such a framework, I would like to improve it and implement it for my work and to help others implement it in the same way. Write me a comment in the comment section. Share it with someone who could appreciate it and use it or needs it today based on your conversation with them. And with this, thank you for watching and goodbye.
Subscribe to Daddy's channel. Give me the mic.